Okay.
So I got half the job done, but I didn't. I couldn't get out the share pinner to replace it. Okay, welcome to Garden of the Spirit, a class studying apples from the orchard for the second time, beginning after Pesach, 2014. This class meets in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, center of the universe, and is held in memory of Malka Ruth Bas Moshe, Margaret Vogel of blessed memory. Apples from the Orchard contain selections of teachings of Kabbalah from the Arizal or Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, based on the weekly Torah portion, superbly translated and explained by Rabbi Moshe Wisniewski. We are up to Tetzaveh, chapter 2, that's page 448. Okay, I got up to 8. Do the best we can. A regular Kohen wears 4 garments when working in the Beis HaMikdash. The Kohen Gadol wears 8. One of the garments of the Kohen Gadol is the ephod, an apron made of wool dyed techeles. That's the blue-green dye from the chilazon, the snail off the coast of northern Israel, that covered the backside of the Kohen and tied in front. If I just add, I was there 2 weeks ago tomorrow at that place. The tcheles, that's the bluish dye that comes from the snail, the chilazon, is a permanent dye, and it's a high-end product. We know that it was on the one string of each corner of the tzitzis, only one string. My guess is that one string that the tcheles probably cost more than the whole rest of the garment of tzitzis. And it was typically only could be afforded only nobility and extremely rich could afford garments made of tcheles. In any case, so the ephod of the Kohen Gadol was dyed techeles. It was like an apron, but instead of covering the front, it covered the back and then tied in front. 2 straps from this ephod went upwards over the shoulders of the Kohen Gadol and attached to another of the garments called the choshen, which we usually translate as a breastplate. The choshen was made of material folded over that held 12 stones with the names of the tribes inscribed on them. Inside the choshen was a parchment with Hashem's name on it called Urim V'Tumim. Are we okay so far?
Yep.
Okay, Alan, please begin. 448.
Dressed for success. You shall make holy garments for Aaron and his sons, for honor and for glory. This week's Torah portion discusses the special garments the Kohanim had to wear while performing their service in the Mishkan and later in the Holy Temple. Every priest had to wear 4 basic garments: pants, bichnasayim, a tunic, a kutnet, a sash, avnet, and a turban-like headgear, a migbat. In addition, the high priest, Kohen Gadol, had to wear 4 additional garments: a robe, me'il, a half-skirt, ephod, breastplate, choshen, and a headband, tzitz. The headgear of the high priest is more elaborate than that of a regular priest and is called mitznefes in place of mighat.
Okay, thank you. 2, the ephod, similar to an apron, wrapped around the back of the Kohen Gadol. It tied and had an opening in front. In this, it represented an indirect flow of divine energy, also called a flow from the backside. This is also compared to a view through an opaque glass. We have many ways of describing the flow of divine energy, divine beneficence, as he says. We could say it's indirect. We could say it's from the backside. We could say it's like looking through an opaque glass. The choshen worn on the front represented a direct flow of divine energy, also called a flow from the front. This is also compared to a view through a clear glass, or a glass not only that's clear, but that actually magnifies. The word for glass is the Greek word ispaklaria. Ispaklaria is like in English we have like spectacle is to view, right, Jim?
Yeah.
A spectator, spectacle.
Yeah, like glasses.
Like glasses.
Yeah, spectacles.
So that's ispaklaria. Okay, go ahead, Ellen.
The Zohar describes the spiritual powers of the ephod and the choshen as follows. The ephod corresponds to the ability to perceive spirituality through a clouded glass, while the choshen corresponds to the ability to perceive spirituality through a clear glass plate. The former is the back, the latter is the front. The ephod is, as we said, a sort of half skirt tied around the waist, which covers the back part of the body from the waist down. Two suspender-like straps come out of the upper edge of the back part of the ephod and extend over the crest of the shoulders. Onto these straps are fastened two chains from which the choshen hangs. The choshen is a folded piece of fabric which rests over the chest, onto which are fixed 12 precious stones. Thus, although parts of it are visible from the front, the ephod mainly covers the back of the body, while the choshen is entirely on the front of the body. Back and front in the imagery of Kabbalah denote direct and indirect experience. Thus, the ephod symbolizes the ability to perceive spirituality through an opaque glass plate, which may mean either a translucent but not transparent pane of glass or mirror. In either case, what is implied is an indirect experience. In contrast, the choshen symbolizes the ability to perceive spirituality through a clear glass plate, that is, directly.
Okay, thank you. 4. We have spoken. Welcome back, Yisrael.
Yeah. I can't get through the computer, so I'm on the phone.
Okay. Well, it must be a snowstorm there and the power is out.
No, it's too hot here.
Hey, you read what's going on in Argentina? The riots?
No.
Yeah. We have spoken many times about relationships that are back-to-back as opposed to relationships that are face-to-face. Relationships that are back-to-back are focused on themselves, not on the other person in the relationship. The relationship is superficial, going through the motions, rote. There is a relationship, but the people, are not on the same page emotionally, intellectually, in values, etc., Gershon. And when Zeir Anpin and Nukva interact back to back, the flow of divine energy into the world is by rote and lacks active involvement of the divine. Give me a minute. 5. Okay. So we've had this many times where we talk about back to back and how it's like the world is running on autopilot. When we speak about a relationship between Zeir Anpin and Nukva that is face to face, then it means that there is a the divine is actively involved in the world. There are brachas coming into the world. The people are doing what we got to do, serving Hashem well, and causing harmony between Ze'er Anpin and Nukva. This is called face-to-face or direct. Now, we've had this a number of times. There's a much greater explanation of Ze'er Anpin being the male partsuf and Nukva being the female partsuf. And we've had, although it's related to what we've learned very often, here he explains in depth this idea. Okay, go ahead, Alan, to explain.
To explain, Ze'er Anpin and its Nukva are initially back-to-back. Ze'er Anpin corresponds to the Choshen, and the ephod corresponds to its Nukva.
Ze'er Anpin is Choshen, and ephod is Nukva. Okay. Yeah, I forgot to write that.
Hashem emanated the spheros initially as one-dimensional points. This means that each sphere was a pure manifestation of one of Hashem's attributes. Although in this form, each sphere was extremely intense, this scheme was incomplete. In order for any two entities to interrelate and interact, each must possess something of the other. Their common ground for communication and cross-fertilization is the presence of each one in the other. For example, in order for two people to communicate, each has to have a place in his mind where he can, at least to some extent, picture what is to be the other person. Through this mini presence of the other person within himself, he can understand what the other person is saying and couch what he wants to say to him in terms that he will be able to understand. This was lacking in the original scheme of the spheros. Since there was no interaction, this version of creation or world was called tohu, chaos, and eventually collapsed. The rectified world that was created in order to fix this problem was called tikkun, rectification. Tohu and tikkun are the immature and mature versions of the first of the four created worlds. Atzilus emanation generally when reference is made to the world of Atzilus, the mature version tikkun is meant.
Mm-hmm.
In the world of Atzilus, the spheres are no longer one-dimensional points, but have metamorphosed.
Yeah, this
to arrays.
It should have been metamorphosed, whatever.
Yeah, into arrays, partsuvim, singular's partsuf, of 10 subspheres. This occurs according to the following pattern. Keser is Anik Yomin, the ancient of days, Atik Yomin, and also Arich Anpin, the long face. Chachma is Abba, father. Bina is Ima, mother. Chesed, Gvura, Teferes, Netzach, Hod, Nisod, Zer Anpin, the small face. And Malchus, Nukva, the female of Zer Anpin.
So it looks to me like when we describe them as partsuf, it's just another way. And for practical purposes, it's another way to describe the spheres. The spheres we describe as each sphere by itself. Keser, Chachma, Bina, Chesed, Gvura, Teres, and so on. When we speak in terms of partsuf, and I think the best English translation for partsuf might be profile.
Yeah.
When we speak of partsuf, so then we speak of like a different function. Chachma becomes Abba. We speak of it in a different function as a father, and Bina, Ima, and then Ze'er Anpin would refer to the 6 spheres of Chesed through Yesod. Okay, go ahead.
Note that Keser splits into two parsufim, while the aggregate of the emotional attributes from Chesed to Yesod form one. Each parsuf comprises 10 subsephiros, as we said, so we may speak of Chesed of Abba, Chachma of Zeranpin, and so on. Once each sephira has become a parsuf, the sephiros may interact and interrelate to each other. This process of interaction is called coupling. Zivug. Note now, when any two people communicate or couple, either in the physical or abstract sense, there can be many levels of intensity in their interaction. One of the parties may be distracted or disinterested. This is obviously a less than ideal level of communication. The ignored party will feel as if the other person has turned his back to him, regardless of whether he is physically facing him or not. Thus, in the imagery of Kabbalah, when two parsufim couple, they are said to be either face to face to back to face, or back to back. The initial state is that of being back to back. Since the orientation of youth is self-centeredness, other people are perceived mainly as objects through which one reaches his own selfish ends. Maturity is the broadening of perspective that encompasses the other's perspective. This is the state of being face to face.
Okay. Thank you. That's a very long explanation.
Yeah, but it's it's very good. It's very good. It's very direct and simple and accurate. It's
Yes.
unbelievable.
Yes, it's very well done. And it could be that he started writing these parshas.
Mhm.
I don't think he started at Bereshit, so it could be that he put in these explanations when he first started writing. Okay, 5. Zeir Anpin is associated with the name Havaya, whose gematria is 26. Nukva is associated with the name Adni, whose gematria is 65. 26 and 65, or in other words, each of the partsufim is associated with a different name of Hashem. 26 and 65 is 91, which is the gematria of ephod, of the apron of Cheles, which, even though we said that the ephod is connected with nukva, it implies that the ephod steps out of its state of back to back, causes Zeir Anpin and nukva to interact in a manner that's face to face. So it's fulfilling its mission and its purpose. It's working. It doesn't stay in a state of back to back. It starts there, but it's working to change that and have a relationship of face to face between Zeir Anpin and nukva. Go ahead, Jim. 449 at the bottom.
So the numerical value of ephod is identical to that of the two divine names, Chavaya, Adni. The coupling of these two names is the coupling between Zeir Anpin and Nukva. Every divine name is associated with a sephira or a parsif. Since the name of God is simply a term we use to refer to him acting in a certain way, the name Havaya is primarily associated with the sephira of Tiferet, which is the pivotal sephira of the parsif Zeir Anpin. The name Adni, which means Lord, is associated with the sephira of Malchus, for its manifestation as a parsif the nukva of Zeir Anpin. Thus, the ephod carries in it an allusion to its consummate state, that is the unification with a choshen.
Okay. 6. The choshen is called choshen hamishpat, the choshen of judgment in the Torah. It represents a state of judgmentalism. seeing things with a critical eye. This corresponds to an undeveloped state in which someone does not look favorably on others. Zeir Anpin is not open to interact with Nukva and is thus in a state of back-to-back. So what we're saying is here that this is a question. We're saying that the ephod shows how Zeir Anpin interacts with Nukva in a way that's face-to-face, but the Choshen shows how they interact in a way that's back-to-back. That's what it seems to be saying. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
So the Choshen, if you take it maybe by itself, it means that, but together it can't mean that. Well, anyway, the Choshen.
It could be it's talking about like different states. They both exist in both states.
Right.
So it could be that it's saying, hey, the ephod, we see how the ephod moves forward. The Choshen starts there and it moves towards a healthy relationship too.
Yeah. So the Choshen responds to Zeir Anpin in its immature judgmental state. This is why it's called the Choshen of judgment, for it is a manifestation of the totally judgmental state of immaturity. The Choshen is chosen a Choshen of judgment because by means of the letters engraved on the precious stones affixed to it, answers were obtained to critical questions or crucial questions facing Jewish people. Allegorically, however, this term indicates that the Choshen at this stage represents Zeir Anpin in its immature, self-oriented state. An immature person sees everything from only one perspective, his, and thus is apt to be highly judgmental of those he comes into contact with. We see this clearly with children who, since they lack the perspective of experience, interpret things only with an eye to how such things impinge upon themselves and what they perceive to be in their best interest. Clearly, when Zeir Anpin is in this state, it is not ready to couple with Nukva face-to-face, right?
Okay. Very interesting. And I apologize for the bias. They talk about immaturity of his perspective and everything he comes in contact with. It leaves out women from here. Yeah. I apologize. Okay, seriously. Okay, so this idea of being judgmental, this is interesting. Being judgmental, being critical, seeing things with a critical eye is childish, is immature. It's like children who can only see their perspective. Okay. 7. Okay, are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember learning this last 6 years ago, and I found it this time. Found the explanation. The Gemara in Baba Basra explains that Job, in wondering why so many bad things happened to him, wondered if Hashem made a mistake. Hashem confused his name Eov for Oyev, which means enemy. So Hashem said, we're going to do X, Y, Z. Burn the fields, sink the ships, have the wind come and the tent turn over on the children and they die. We're going to do that to Oyev, to that one who is an enemy of Hashem. And by mistake, there was a typo and it happened to Eov. So Eov was wondering if there was some kind of mix-up. So Hashem responded that he creates the world to exact details. The book of Eov states, Alan, are you there? The book of Eov states, do you know the time when the mountain goats give birth, or anticipate the labor pains of the gazelle? Did you count the months as they came to term to know the moment of their birth? And other verses along these lines. Hashem looks after him. The Gemara explains that Hashem cites several examples of how he takes care of nature to exact details and would certainly not confuse Eov
Mhm.
with Oyev.
Mhm.
Even more exacting details than this. What does it say? Two of the examples. Alan, welcome back.
Yeah. So that.
Two of the examples are a mountain goat that gives birth at the top of a mountain, and the kid, baby mountain goat is a kid, right?
Yeah.
The kid is in danger of falling down the cliff and dying, that the mountain goat doesn't care about its young. A griffin vulture catches the newborn at just the right moment and saves it from falling. That's one. The other, the birth canal of a gazelle is too narrow for the fetus to pass through. A snake arrives at, ta-da, just the right moment, bites the gazelle in the behind at just the right moment, which helps open the birth canal, and the baby is pushed out.
Mhm.
The griffin vulture and the snake both arrive at just the right moment. And here, let's go here, dun, 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 dun. Ay, 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 ay. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Do we know of any animals that behave this way?
I can't see that. Maybe, hold on a second. Oh, okay, I can make it bigger. Oh, okay.
I'm going to read it out loud.
Okay, great, thanks.
I'm going to read it aloud. Is the Gemara describing real behavior of animals? And if so, has there ever been a recording of such behavior? And this is like open questions.
Yeah.
So Rabbi Hirsch ascertains that Rabbi Hirsch is from the 1800s.
Mhm.
Many scientific known facts mentioned in the Talmud were simply Chazal repeating what scientists of their time said. They never fact-checked the science. They only used it to help people improve their religious life.
Okay, I'm getting sorry.
Huh?
Oh.
This is the whole. Who said this? The whole passage of Gemara is metaphorical learning of Seder Yom, full of interpretations and hints. It's not physical, so it's not meant to be taken literally. It's a metaphor for something spiritual or for how Hashem runs the world. From certain Mefarshim, it was implied that they understood the Gemara literally. Rabbi Nathan Slifkin is a rabbi who writes quite a bit about nature and science connected with Gemara and Midrashim, and he'll often take a scientific look at it. Some suggest these taken at face value, these descriptions do not concur with our knowledge of what actually happens. Some suggest the Talmud is according to logical beliefs of the era. Others argue the Talmud is speaking of mystical matters. Another possibility is Talmud is using poetic language to describe the animals, how they give birth. The Ralbag writes, if the matter is true, the explanation of the verse is so. If not, the intent is that this animal gives birth with great difficulty, and accordingly, the newborn is in great peril, were it not for Hashem's providence to cause the young to be produced in such a way that they do not die at birth. I wanted to share that with you guys. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have the Gemara here. I have the book of Eov. And so now, but what they don't say, what is that the Choshen? By the way, the Gemara there calls the snake that bites the doe or the gazelle, it bites the hind in the hind's quarters. It calls it the Gemara word is drakon. My understanding was that drakon could be dragon or a snake with wings. You know which one I mean. You know which picture I mean. I could also mention in other places where they make designs of idols or designs of mythical figures or of possible things that were worshipped. It also uses the word drakon. So in any case, the choshen that we have, and that's the term that's used there in the Gemara, choshen, the breastplate, is the same letters as nachash, snake. So since it's probably my second son who keeps calling. Since we're talking about a relationship that's back to back, that means that each one no, it isn't. It means that each one is focused on themselves and they're not on the same page. And we said, for example, the Sephiras of Tohu, of the first beginning of creation of Tohu, where each Sephira is totally focused only on itself. We had that in the 8 kings from Esav. That represents Tohu. And each was focused on themselves, no room for anything else, and they all crashed and burned. So it says they ruled and they died. They ruled and they died. So we're talking about an undeveloped or immature relationship. So that's why Choshen, the breastplate, is now viewed as a nachash, as a snake. And again, this idea is like totally focused on yourself in the relationship. Okay, go ahead, Jim.
So the Choshen in this state is equivalent to the snake that tears open the womb of the doe when it gives birth, as we explained in our discussion of the splitting of the sea. For this is also a manifestation of total judgment. The imagery here is that of a young female deer giving birth for the first time. Since this is her first impregnation, the opening of her womb is still virginal, narrow, that is too narrow. In fact, for the fawn to fit through. In her pain trying to give birth, the doe cries, and a snake, hearing the cry, bites the doe, tearing open her womb so the fawn can emerge. Although this benefits the doe, the snake is surely acting in its own interest. The union of the Choshen and the Ephod at this immature state is thus characterized by extreme self-interest, each party acting only on its own behalf and motivating to interact only by what it thinks it can get out of the other. When the Jewish people went out of Egypt, they were spiritually immature also. The 7-week period between the Exodus and the revelation at Mount Sinai was a maturation process, which we relive every year nowadays in the mitzvah of counting the Omer. Both the splitting of the sea, 7 days after the Exodus, and the giving the Torah at Mount Sinai, 7 weeks after the Exodus, were revelations of divinity. But whereas the Jewish people were maturely prepared for the revelation of Mount Sinai, the splitting of the sea occurred at the beginning of their spiritual education when they were so young. Any revelation may be likened to a birth, but this birth was a first birth and is therefore similar to the first birth of the doe just described.
Okay, so it says It compares us to the Jewish people at the Red Sea, when the sea split. Okay, and there are two things that we say are difficult for Hashem. One is, that providing for mankind, 15, Bereshit Rabbah, is as difficult as splitting the sea. So we say splitting the sea is difficult because the Jewish people were in a early stage of development, not worthy of it. And I guess providing for mankind also depends on Hashem's judgment, whether it's going to rain or not. That's connected with judgment. If it doesn't rain, we have nothing to eat. Okay, Alan, continue. 451.
Can you hear me? Maybe I can read.
I'm sorry, Gershon. Yes, Gershon.
Yes.
451. I got that wrong.
We are therefore taught that providing for mankind is as difficult for Hashem as the splitting of the sea, for both are subject to Hashem's judgment, as mentioned in the Zohar. Our sages state that making a living is compared to the splitting of the sea, as it is written, "Praise Hashem, who split the sea apart, who gives bread to all flesh." Now, it certainly is not difficult for Hashem to do anything, including splitting the sea and providing for man's needs. The difficulty in both cases arises from the fact that Hashem's attribute of judgment, as we was or is arguing against it. We're taught that when the Jews were crossing the sea, the guardian angel of the Egyptians was complaining that the Jews were just as sinful as the Egyptians, and that there was no justification for allowing them to pass through while the Egyptians were to be drowned. It was only after special merit was found that the attribute of judgment was silenced. Similarly, Hashem provides for all creation's needs every day. But the fact that man is sinful and thus does not deserve his care, makes it difficult for him to provide it. It is only thanks to the fact that Hashem's benevolence prevails over his judgment that man is provided for. From all this, we see that immaturity, the state of being self-oriented and egocentric, arouses Hashem's attribute of judgment.
Okay. And it's interesting line. From all this, we see that immaturity, the state of being self-oriented and egocentric, arouses Hashem's attribute of judgment. If we're critical, Hashem's critical. All right. Okay, so now we're going to, so again, the Choshen breastplate is the same letters as Nachash, the snake. And so the snake bites the dough. The snake has no interest in helping the dough, but it only does that. It does it for its own self-interest. It just so happens that this is beneficial for the dough and the fawn's able to be born. Okay, now we're going to show that Nachash is snake is 358. We have Hashem's name is Shindalad Yud, 314. We're going to take the name Ekia, Aleph Hey Yud Hey, and we're going to do it. We're going to take the value of what we call regressive iteration. And that means one Aleph, the first letter, plus the first two, plus the first three, plus all four. So that's 4 Alephs is 4. 3 Hays is 15. 2 Yuds is 20. And 1 Hay, which is 5. So 4 and 15 is 19, plus 20 is 39, plus 5, 44. Happens to be the same as Dam, blood. And if you add, if you add the 44 and the 314, you get 358. I guess the idea that it's a regressive iteration shows a state of immaturity. Okay, Gershon, go ahead.
Numerically, this is expressed by the fact that the word for snake, Nachash, 358, is equal to the numerical value of the name Shakai, 314, plus the regressive iteration, Achoraim, of the name Ekie, 44, which is also the numerical value of the word for blood, Dam, 44. All of this indicates the state of immaturity. The regressive iteration of a word is derived by writing the word in full, followed by the word with the last letter left off, followed by the word with the last two letters left off, and so on, until only the first letter is left. All these letters are then added up. In our case, the name Ekie is spelled Aleph, Hey, Yud, Hey. It is, if to this we add Aleph, Hey, Yud, Aleph, Hey, and Aleph, by itself, the total numerical values of these letters is 44. The significance of the regressive iteration of a word is that it signifies the concept conveyed by the word, but in an immature, underdeveloped state. Thus, the Hebrew term for this version of the word is achoraim, or back. We mentioned above, in Kabbalah, back signifies the immature state. The name Ekie in Kabbalah usually signifies the Sephira of Bina, the principal component of the intellect. The regressive iteration of Ekie, therefore, signifies immature intellect or the constricted consciousness characteristic of a child or person who has not matured. The name Shakai is associated in Kabbalah with the Sephira of Yesod, the Sephira through which coupling takes place. Thus, the above gematria, numerical equivalence, in which the name Shakai is added to the regressive iteration of the name Ekie, refers to a coupling conducted in a mode of immature consciousness. That means each party motivated by the seeking of their own interest. The total is equal to the snake, who opportunely takes advantage of the immaturity of the doe, causing her to bleed, as we noted above.
The immaturity of the doe, I guess, because they said it was the first birth.
Yeah.
That must be in the
What if the snake is an OBGYN doing a C-section? Come on.
What?
What if the snake is an OBGYN doing a C-section?
Snake, OBGYN.
No, it's not covered by insurance. No.
Oh,
All right.
boo.
Well, I can't see you guys, so I cannot even get into Xfinity in here. What the heck is going on?
You can't see us. We're not smiling.
We could see you when you first signed on.
Yeah.
I know, but it kept
You went away.
telling me my connection was unstable and shut me out, so that's why I'm on the phone now.
It was an
It was-
undeveloped relationship, immature relationship.
It said
Yeah.
you're unstable. Okay, we know
Yeah.
that.
You
We
have
know that.
you have an immature connection.
Yes, I think I have to reset the router.
Or maybe find a snake to bite it.
Yeah.
What do we have here? I don't know. Oh, next door we have plenty of salamanders, but
You got snakes.
that's
Go to
it.
the Everglades. You got plenty of snakes there.
and we have iguanas.
Okay.
You got pythons.
Oh, that's in the Everglades. Yes.
I said go to the Everglades. It's not that far away.
That's like an hour.
Plenty of salamanders. Okay, so we're going to pause here. In any case, do you see the connection between Choshen, the breastplate, and the
Yes.
Nachash and the snake? Something
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that.
All right.
Anyway.
358.
Very good. Good.
Yeah,
Good to
we'll
be
stop
back.
here. What we'll probably do is, when we can, as Mincha gets later, so we'll start probably later, hopefully finish before 9, and then we'll switch our class to before Mincha. So let's say when class is about 7, when Mincha is about 7, we'll have the class at 6.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good
all.
night, everybody.